I didn't plan to tell this story. Honestly, I tried to forget it, to bury the pieces of myself that broke that day. But some pain doesn't stay buried. It lives in quiet glances, in songs you can't listen to anymore, in the silence between two heartbeats. What happened changed everything. And as I share it with you, moment by moment, I'll reveal things I never thought I'd say out loud. There will be parts that hurt, parts that surprise you, maybe even parts that sound too real to ignore. But if you stay with me to the end, you'll understand why I had to tell it now. Why some truths can't stay hidden forever. The clatter of silverware against porcelain, the murmur of strained conversation, the fluorescent hum of the restaurant, all of it. A discordant symphony accompanying the familiar, yet agonizing ritual. It was a Tuesday, just like any other, and the air in the Italian bistro, Bella Notte, felt heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of expectations unmet, and the slow, grinding erosion of family bonds. The scent of garlic and simmering tomato sauce, usually a comfort, now felt like a suffocating embrace, a constant reminder of the warmth that had long since faded within the walls of their shared experiences. Across the checkered tablecloth sat the tableau of a family slowly unraveling. The mother, her face etched with a perpetual weariness, picked at her pasta, her gaze flitting between her phone and the faces of her children. The father, his tie loosened, his eyes clouded with a mixture of exhaustion and something akin to resentment, nursed his glass of Chianti, the silence between them thick with unspoken grievances. The elder son, a successful lawyer, meticulously dissected his lasagna, his every movement precise, calculated, mirroring the way he navigated the world, efficiently, detached. And then there was the younger daughter, her eyes downcast, her shoulders slumped, a silent echo of the family's unspoken judgments. At the center of this strained gathering sat the protagonist, the one who bore the unspoken label, the one who felt the sting of the invisible burden, a person who felt the weight of their existence, a person who understood that they were no longer considered an asset but a liability. The words, sharp and stinging, had already been spoken, the accusations levied, the judgments rendered. The protagonist, who had once been the center of their world, now felt relegated to the periphery, an unwanted presence, a constant reminder of failures and disappointments. The protagonist had always tried, always strived to meet the expectations of their family. They had sacrificed their own dreams, their own desires, in an attempt to find a place in their world. But the more they tried, the further they seemed to drift, their efforts met with indifference, their achievements overshadowed by their perceived shortcomings. The protagonist's every attempt to connect, to share their joys and sorrows, was met with dismissive gestures, curt replies, and a pervasive sense of disappointment. As the dinner progressed, the protagonist's heart ached. The familiar feeling of being an unwelcome guest in their own life washed over them. They felt a profound sense of isolation, a crushing loneliness that threatened to suffocate them. The protagonist tried to speak, to interject, to offer a different perspective, but the words caught in their throat, choked by the weight of their unspoken pain. Just as the protagonist felt themselves dissolving into the background, just as the sense of worthlessness threatened to consume them, a figure emerged from the periphery, a figure whose presence would forever alter the course of their life. The waiter, a kind-faced man with eyes that held a hint of wisdom, approached their table. He paused, a subtle look of concern crossing his face as he surveyed the strained scene. Then, with a gentle smile and a voice that cut through the oppressive atmosphere, he delivered a pronouncement that would change everything. Tables on the owner tonight. The announcement of the owner's generosity hung in the air, a sudden disruption to the carefully constructed narrative of familial disapproval. The surprise, however, was merely the catalyst. The true transformation began internally, rippling outward like a stone dropped into still water. Furthermore, the unexpected gesture, the simple act of kindness, served as a mirror, reflecting the protagonist's own suppressed capacity for empathy. Building on this, the protagonist, accustomed to being seen through a lens of deficiency, began to perceive the world with fresh eyes. The waiter, an anonymous figure until that moment, became an emblem of unexpected grace. Another crucial layer is that the owner's anonymity amplified the impact. It wasn't a calculated act of familial obligation, but a genuine, selfless offering. Consequently, the protagonist's perspective began to shift. They had been conditioned to believe their worth was contingent on external validation, on the approval of those closest to them. Conversely, this act of unsolicited compassion revealed a different reality, that value could exist independently, that generosity could be extended without expectation, and that kindness could be a source of strength, not weakness. Have you ever been through something like this? Or do you know someone who has? We'd love to read your comment below. We read everything with an open heart, and who knows? Maybe your words will help someone else too. Also, check if you're still subscribed. There are many powerful stories coming, and you don't want to miss the next episodes. If you're enjoying the story, leave a like and tell us where you're listening from. It really helps us understand your thoughts and keeps us motivated to keep going. If you love stories that truly move you, that warm your heart, or give you chills, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. I promise the next story might surprise you even more. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar situations. The protagonist's internal landscape, previously barren and desolate, now blossomed with the possibility of connection. This wasn't about the free meal. It was about the validation of their inherent worth. The protagonist had been taught to equate their value with performance, with adherence to a predetermined set of standards, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of inadequacy. The silence that followed the waiter's announcement was pregnant with meaning. It was a moment of reckoning, a pause in the orchestrated symphony of familial judgment. Furthermore, it was a chance to reassess the narrative that had been imposed upon them. It was a moment to consider the implications of this unexpected act of generosity. The protagonist, previously lost in the labyrinth of self-doubt, began to consider the waiter's actions as a metaphor for life's inherent potential for goodness. Building on this idea, they started to see the world as a tapestry, woven with threads of both darkness and light. The protagonist began to recognize the profound impact of seemingly small acts of kindness. Consequently, a new understanding emerged. That worth wasn't something to be earned, but something intrinsic, something that existed regardless of external circumstances. Conversely, the protagonist understood that they were not defined by their perceived failures, but by their capacity to learn, to grow, and to extend compassion to others. The unexpected generosity of the owner, and the subsequent shift in the protagonist's internal landscape, served as a powerful catalyst for introspection. Moreover, it fostered a crucial understanding of the cyclical nature of judgment. Consider, for example, how societal expectations can create a self-perpetuating loop of criticism. The protagonist, having internalized the negative assessments of their family, had begun to judge themselves harshly, perpetuating a cycle of self-doubt and inadequacy. Another crucial layer is how this experience shattered the illusion of control. The protagonist had believed, erroneously, that they could earn their family's approval through relentless effort. Then, the unexpected act of kindness from a stranger demonstrated that external validation was not the key to fulfillment. Conversely, it highlighted the importance of cultivating an internal locus of control, a belief in their own inherent value. Consider for a moment the impact of this realization on the protagonist's sense of self. They had been trapped in a gilded cage of their own making, meticulously constructing a persona designed to please their family. This, however, had come at the expense of their authentic self. Furthermore, the simple act of a stranger's kindness became the key to unlocking the cage. Building on this, the protagonist began to question the very foundations of their self-perception. They started to examine the messages they had internalized, the expectations they had adopted as their own. Consequently, they began a process of deconstruction, dismantling the false narratives that had shaped their identity. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar situations. The protagonist, having tasted the sweetness of unexpected compassion, began to recognize the toxicity of conditional love. Furthermore, they realized that true connection couldn't be forged on the shifting sands of judgment. In contrast, genuine relationships must be built on a foundation of acceptance and empathy. The protagonist started to understand that the most important relationship they needed to cultivate was the one with themselves. They began to practice self-compassion, treating themselves with the same kindness and understanding they had witnessed in the waiter's gesture. This was a radical act of self-acceptance, a turning point in their journey. Furthermore, the protagonist began to redefine success. They realized that true achievement wasn't measured in external accolades or familial approval, but in their capacity for growth, resilience, and compassion. Consequently, the protagonists started to prioritize their own well-being, setting boundaries, and making choices that aligned with their values. The protagonist's journey was not without its challenges. They faced moments of doubt, setbacks, and temptations to revert to old patterns. However, the memory of the waiter's kindness served as a guiding light, reminding them of their inherent worth and the possibility of a different future. The protagonist's transformation, accelerated by the waiter's unexpected generosity, sparked a profound shift in their perception of vulnerability. Previously, they'd viewed any display of weakness as a liability, a chink in their armor that exposed them to further criticism. Then, the simple act of kindness demonstrated the power of openness, of allowing oneself to be seen, flaws and all. In addition to this, the protagonist began to understand vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a source of strength, a bridge to authentic connection. The protagonist began to experiment with this newfound understanding. Subsequently, they started to share their true feelings, their fears, and their aspirations with carefully chosen individuals. The initial response was mixed. Some met their openness with discomfort, others with genuine empathy. On the other hand, these interactions, regardless of the outcome, strengthened the protagonist's resolve. Furthermore, the protagonist started to see the world through a lens of empathy, recognizing the struggles and challenges of others. They became less judgmental, more understanding, and more compassionate. This, in turn, created a ripple effect of positivity. The protagonist's newfound empathy fostered deeper connections and helped them forge new relationships, built on mutual respect and understanding. Consider for a moment how this applies when you face situations where you feel compelled to hide your true self. The protagonist's journey highlights the importance of authenticity. However, this doesn't mean recklessly sharing everything with everyone. Instead, it's about carefully choosing the people with whom you share your vulnerabilities. Another crucial layer is how the protagonist learned to embrace imperfection. They stopped striving for an unattainable ideal and began to accept themselves, flaws and all. In contrast, this self-acceptance didn't lead to complacency. Rather, it fueled their desire for growth and improvement, but in a more sustainable, less self-critical way. Consider the protagonist's experience in relation to the concept of a garden. Before, they had cultivated a meticulously manicured lawn, hiding any imperfection. However, this facade was exhausting and ultimately isolating. Then, inspired by the waiter's kindness, they began to create a more natural, diverse garden. Consequently, they allowed weeds to grow alongside flowers, embracing the inherent beauty of imperfection. Building on this, however, the protagonist started to see the value in seeking help. They had always been reluctant to ask for assistance, fearing it would expose their weaknesses. Consequently, they began to seek professional help, therapy, to process their emotions and to develop healthier coping mechanisms. Now, consider how this applies when you face situations where you are hesitant to ask for help. The protagonist's transformation underscores the importance of recognizing that it's okay to not have all the answers. Furthermore, it's a reminder that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a testament to one's courage and strength. Reflecting on this journey so far, we observe a subtle alchemy, a transmutation of the protagonist's internal landscape. The initial setting, a tableau of familial discord, served as a crucible, forging the raw materials of adversity into something far more resilient. Within the stifling confines of expectation and judgment, a seed of self-discovery took root, nurtured by an unexpected act of grace. This seemingly insignificant gesture, a mere offering of a complimentary meal, acted as a catalyst, setting in motion a series of cascading transformations. The narrative, much like the unfolding of a complex tapestry, reveals intricate patterns of cause and effect. The protagonist's initial struggles, their attempts to conform and appease, can be viewed as the threads that initially bound them, restricting their movement and obscuring their true essence. However, as the story progresses, these very threads begin to unravel, loosened by the gentle pull of self-compassion and the burgeoning awareness of their inherent worth. Consider for a moment the subtle shifts in perspective, the gradual erosion of self-doubt. The protagonist's journey is not a linear progression, but a spiral, with moments of regression and self-reproach. Each setback, however, becomes a stepping stone, a learning opportunity that deepens their understanding of themselves and the world around them. It's as if the protagonist, initially navigating a labyrinth, slowly begins to map its corridors, recognizing the patterns and identifying the dead ends. Drawing these strands together, we see a transformation that transcends the immediate circumstances. The protagonist's experience becomes a microcosm of the human condition, a reflection of the struggles we all face as we navigate the complexities of relationships, expectations, and self-perception. The story, in essence, is a testament to the power of kindness, not merely as an act of charity, but as a catalyst for profound personal growth. The narrative moves beyond the immediate dynamics of the family, transforming into an exploration of the universal search for authenticity and belonging. The protagonist's response to the unexpected act of generosity reveals a fundamental truth. The capacity for transformation resides within each of us. The waiter's gesture, the free meal, was merely the spark. It ignited a fire of self-discovery, a flame that continues to burn brightly, illuminating the path toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. As the story builds, the protagonist's evolution reflects the possibility of change, the potential for healing, and the enduring power of the human spirit. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer. The journey, once a solitary struggle, has become a shared experience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always the possibility of light, the potential for connection, and the enduring strength of the human heart. The protagonist's story is not merely a personal narrative, but an invitation to examine our own lives, to recognize our own inherent worth, and to embrace the transformative power of self-compassion. As we pivot towards the final reflection, we prepare to witness the culmination of these experiences and the final unveiling of the protagonist's new understanding. The final course arrived, a culinary metaphor for the protagonist's newfound perspective. The dish, previously a source of contention, of forced smiles and strained conversation, now held a different flavor, a subtle blend of liberation and quiet resolve. The family, still present, remained a complex equation, but the protagonist no longer felt defined by their approval or disapproval. They had stepped outside the frame, no longer confined by the roles they had been assigned. The waiter's act of kindness, the seemingly insignificant gesture, had become a turning point, a catalyst that shattered the illusions and revealed the contours of their true self. The protagonist's story, far from being a solitary tale of familial conflict, now expanded to encompass a broader exploration of human resilience. The protagonist's journey became a testament to the power of self-compassion, a potent antidote to the corrosive effects of judgment. The protagonist had learned, through the unexpected generosity of a stranger, that worth is not earned, it is inherent. This realization became the cornerstone of their transformation, the foundation upon which they began to rebuild their life. The protagonist, having navigated the treacherous terrain of self-doubt and external expectations, now stood at a vantage point, able to see with greater clarity. The world, once a source of anxiety and disappointment, had become a place of possibility, a canvas upon which they could paint their own narrative. The protagonist understood that the past, while formative, did not dictate the future. The protagonist had learned to be present, to embrace the uncertainties, and to meet each moment with an open heart. The protagonist's transformation, however, was not a neatly packaged conclusion. There were no grand pronouncements or sudden epiphanies. It was a gradual process, a continuous unfolding, characterized by both triumphs and setbacks. The protagonist had learned that growth is not linear, that the path toward self-discovery is often winding and unpredictable. The protagonist had learned to embrace the imperfections, to celebrate the small victories, and to treat themselves with the same kindness and understanding they had witnessed in the waiter's gesture. The protagonist, no longer burdened by the weight of expectations, now felt a sense of freedom. They had learned to set boundaries, to prioritize their well-being, and to make choices that aligned with their values. The protagonist had found their voice, and were no longer afraid to use it. The protagonist had become an advocate for themselves, a testament to the transformative power of self-belief. They understood that true fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from the depths of their own being. The protagonist's legacy, therefore, is not defined by a singular event, but by the enduring impact of their transformation. The protagonist's journey serves as a powerful reminder that within each of us lies the potential for profound change. The protagonist's story is an invitation to embrace our own vulnerabilities, to cultivate self-compassion, and to recognize the inherent worth that resides within each and every one of us. The true practice begins now. Begin the journey and discover the profound possibilities that await.